Most engines get replaced because they fail. This one got replaced because it did the opposite. It kept running, kept lasting, and kept making newer machines harder to justify. That is the part nobody says out loud. Riders trusted it. Mechanics respected it. Owners held onto bikes longer because this engine simply did not give them many reasons to let go. And when that starts hurting parts sales, service hours, and showroom traffic, reliability stops being just a strength. It becomes a problem. Today, we are exposing the engine that lasted so well. The system around it had no choice but to move on, so watch till the end, because what replaced it says everything about where the industry really went. What's happening? A proven engine disappeared without the warning signs riders are used to seeing. There was no recall campaign, no service bulletin stacking up at the dealer, and no flood of complaints about failures that could not be ignored. It did not earn a bad reputation over time. It simply stopped showing up in new machines, like someone quietly closed a door and never explained why. That is what makes it stand out. Engines usually fade out after problems, not success. You see the pattern over the years. Something starts failing, word spreads, fixes pile up, and eventually the design gets replaced. That cycle makes sense. Riders understand it. Mechanics expect it. This one did not follow that path. Instead, it built a reputation that only grew stronger with time. Owners kept riding them without opening the motor. Shops saw fewer major repairs than expected. High mileage stopped being a surprise and started becoming normal, the kind of normal that makes people stop talking about numbers altogether. There is a difference between an engine that performs well and one that settles into long-term trust. Performance gets attention early. Trust builds slowly mile after mile without drama. This engine lived in that second category. It was not chasing headlines. It was quietly proving itself every time it started. Every time it pulled, every time it came back home without needing anything more than basic care. That kind of track record does not usually lead to disappearance. It leads to loyalty. It leads to riders holding onto machines longer than expected. It leads to fewer trade-ins, fewer replacements, fewer reasons to walk into a showroom looking for something new. That absence of failure tells its own story, because engines do not disappear when they are failing. They disappear when something else changes. Built when losing wasn't an option. This motor came out of a time when the company behind it did not have room to experiment for the sake of style or marketing. Sales were slipping, competition was rising, and the gap between what riders wanted and what was being delivered was getting harder to ignore. The pressure was not theoretical. It was immediate and measurable. Under those conditions, the goal shifts. It is no longer about building something interesting. It becomes about building something that works every time under real use. Something that can be trusted not just on the first ride, but over the long stretch that follows. The kind of design that does not rely on being replaced quickly to stay relevant. That pressure shapes decisions in a different way. Instead of chasing peak numbers, the focus moves to durability. Instead of pushing components to their edge, engineers leave margin. Heat gets managed carefully. Loads stay within limits that allow parts to last. Materials are chosen for how they hold up over time, not just how they perform in a short test. You can feel that difference once the miles start adding up. The engine does not ask for attention. It does not surprise you with sudden issues. It settles into a pattern that feels predictable, almost routine, in the best possible way. Start it, ride it, maintain it, repeat. No drama, no constant adjustments, no sense that something is wearing out faster than it should. That kind of pressure does not produce average machines. It produces overbuilt ones. If this is already making sense, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And share your experience below. What's the most reliable engine you've owned? And did it ever actually need serious work? What overbuilt actually means? Overbuilt is a word that gets used loosely, but in this case, it shows up in how the engine behaves, not just how it is described. You feel it in the way power comes in, without strain. you hear it in the lack of mechanical noise that usually signals parts working near their limits. You notice it in how little changes as the miles climb. The design leans towards stability. The engine runs in a range where it does not have to push hard to do its job. That reduces wear in ways that are not always visible right away. Internal parts move with less stress. Heat is managed more evenly. Clearances stay where they are supposed to be instead of drifting out of spec. Materials play a role as well. Surfaces that resist wear keep their shape longer. Coatings designed for longevity hold up under repeated cycles. The result is not just an engine that lasts, but one that keeps feeling consistent as it does. The way it runs at lower mileage is not that different from the way it runs much later on. That consistency changes how you ride. You stop listening for problems. You stop expecting something to go wrong. The machine becomes something you rely on without thinking about it too much. That is a different relationship than constantly monitoring for signs of wear or failure. And steady is exactly what changes how a machine lives over time. Before we go further, there's something most riders don't think about until it's too late. The gear and tools you keep around this engine decide how long it actually stays this reliable. When mileage stops being a concern, there comes a point where mileage stops feeling like a countdown and starts feeling like a record of use. You look at the number and it does not create worry. It creates confidence. The engine has already proven it can handle what most riders will ever ask of it. That shift changes behavior. Instead of planning around potential failures, you plan around where you want to go. Trips get longer. Stops become less about checking the machine and more about taking a break. The engine becomes something that fades into the background, doing its job without drawing attention. Maintenance follows the same pattern. It becomes predictable. You know what needs to be done and when. There are fewer surprises, fewer unexpected repairs, fewer moments where something interrupts the ride. The machine settles into a rhythm that feels stable. That stability is not common. Most engines remind you over time that they are wearing. Small issues show up. Adjustments become more frequent. Parts start to need replacement. You learn to expect it. Here, that expectation fades. The engine continues without giving you reasons to question it. And when something stops needing attention, the effects reach further than the bike itself. The service bay gets quiet. Fewer failures mean fewer jobs coming through the door. Major repairs stop showing up the way they used to. Instead of engines coming in for serious work, most of what lands in the shop becomes routine. Fluids, inspections, small adjustments. The kind of work that keeps things running, not the kind that fills a week. That changes the rhythm inside the service bay. Hours that used to be booked solid start opening up. Schedules stretch. The urgency that comes with breakdowns fades into something slower. Mechanics still work, but the work feels lighter, less constant. Not because the skill is gone, but because the demand for it has shifted. From the outside, that looks like success. Riders see reliability, fewer breakdowns, fewer headaches, fewer unexpected costs. It feels like progress. A machine doing exactly what it was supposed to do, mile after mile, without interruption. That is what most people want when they buy a bike. From the inside, it feels different. Service departments are built around flow. Bikes come in, work gets done, parts get replaced, labor hours add up. When that flow slows, the structure around it feels the change. It is not a failure of the machine. It is the opposite. But the effect on the system is real. The shop does not collapse. It adjusts. But the adjustment is not always comfortable. Less major work means fewer high-value jobs. Fewer high-value jobs mean less predictable income. The balance shifts from heavy repair to light maintenance. And that changes how the entire operation feels day to day. The shop floor is only one piece of a much larger chain, and the slowdown does not stay contained for long. When parts stop moving, components that normally wear out on a predictable schedule begin to last longer than expected. Items that used to be replaced regularly stay in service. Seals hold. Internal parts keep their shape. The usual cycle of wear and replacement stretches out over a longer period. Orders reflect that change. Parts that once moved quickly through the system begin to sit. Shelves stay stocked longer than planned. Reorders slow down. The steady rhythm that keeps inventory flowing loses its pace. Not because riders stopped riding, but because the machines stopped needing those parts as often. That creates a different kind of pressure. Suppliers build their business around movement. Parts are produced, shipped, installed, and replaced again over time. When that cycle stretches, the entire system feels it. Production schedules shift. forecasts become less certain. What used to be predictable starts to drift. It is not a sudden collapse. It is a gradual change. Numbers adjust quarter by quarter. Demand does not disappear. It spreads out. What once happened over a shorter span now takes longer to play out. That difference matters when the system is built around consistent turnover. Durability changes timing. Timing changes expectations. When parts do not fail as often, the demand curve flattens. That affects how much is produced, how much is stocked, and how quickly it moves. The entire chain slows, even though the machines themselves are performing better than ever. From a rider's perspective, this is a benefit. Fewer replacements, lower long-term costs, less time spent dealing with worn components. The machine becomes easier to live with. It asks for less and gives more in return. Pressure does not disappear when parts stop moving. It shifts toward the people planning what comes next. The problem, no one writes down. When machines last longer than expected, the numbers behind them start to change. Customers hold onto bikes instead of replacing them. Trade cycles stretch. Sales projections that assumed a certain rate of turnover begin to miss their targets. That creates a planning problem, not because something went wrong, but because something worked too well. The model that predicts how often riders return for a new machine depends on patterns. When those patterns shift, the forecasts that rely on them lose accuracy. Inside the company, that shows up in quiet ways. Fewer repeat buyers within the expected window. Longer ownership periods, a slower refresh of the customer base. None of it looks like a crisis on its own, but together it changes how future decisions are made. This is not the kind of issue that gets written into a public statement. There is no announcement that says machines are lasting too long. There is no headline pointing to durability as a challenge. The problem exists in spreadsheets, in planning meetings, in discussions about where the next generation needs to go. It is a different kind of tension. Engineers see a design that performs beyond expectations. Planners see a cycle that no longer behaves the way it used. 2. Both are looking at the same machine, but measuring different outcomes. The solution to that kind of problem does not come from fixing what is broken. It comes from changing what is built next. When longevity stops leading the design priorities rarely shift all at once. They move gradually, shaped by multiple pressures at the same time. Performance expectations rise, regulations tighten, market competition pushes for new features and higher output. Each of these factors carries weight. Longevity does not disappear from the conversation, but it no longer stands at the front. It becomes one factor among many, balanced against others that demand attention. The goal changes from maximizing lifespan to managing trade-offs across the entire machine. That shift shows up in how engines are designed. More power is extracted from similar space. Components operate closer to their limits. Systems are added to meet emission standards and performance targets. Each improvement brings benefits, but also introduces new demands on the machine. The result is not a weaker engine, but a different one that delivers more in certain areas while asking more in others. Maintenance becomes more involved. Service intervals may tighten. The long, steady life that defined earlier designs becomes less central to the overall equation. From the outside, this looks like progress. Higher numbers, better compliance, more features. From the inside, it reflects a change in what matters most. Durability is still present, but it is no longer the defining characteristic guiding every decision. What replaces longevity is not a single goal, but a balance shaped by forces beyond the engine itself. The reason they gave. The explanation sounded straightforward when it was presented. More power was needed to stay competitive. Emission standards tightened across multiple markets. Packaging limits made it harder to push the older design any further without major compromises. Those points are not wrong. In fact, they reflect real pressures that every manufacturer faces over time. Performance targets continue to rise as competitors introduce faster and more capable machines. Riders expect stronger acceleration, smoother delivery, and higher top-end output. At the same time, regulations require cleaner emissions, more precise fuel control, and better overall efficiency. Those demands often pull in different directions, forcing engineers to find solutions that satisfy both sides. The earlier design had limits that became harder to ignore. Increasing power beyond a certain point meant changing the core layout. Managing heat within tighter emission requirements added another layer of complexity. Keeping the same architecture while meeting new expectations would have required significant redesign, not small adjustments. Given those constraints, a new direction made sense on paper. A different layout allowed for higher output, more efficient packaging, and better alignment with modern standards. It opened the door to improvements that the previous platform could not easily support without losing its original strengths. From a technical standpoint, the shift can be justified. It aligns with the broader movement across the industry. It reflects the need to evolve in response to changing demands. It is not a careless decision, nor is it made without consideration for what came before. A different direction can solve one set of problems while introducing another. Where the stress went, higher output always brings increased demands inside the engine. More power requires greater pressure within the cylinders. Combustion forces rise, and components must handle stronger loads during each cycle. Heat builds more quickly and must be managed more carefully to prevent damage over time. To handle those conditions, tolerances become tighter. Parts fit together with less margin for variation. Clearances are reduced to improve efficiency and performance. That precision helps deliver better results in the short term, but it leaves less room for gradual wear. The engine continues to perform as expected. It delivers the power riders want and meets the standards it was designed to achieve. On the surface, everything appears improved. The response is sharper, the output is higher, and the machine feels more capable in certain situations. Underneath, the workload has shifted. Components operate closer to their limits. Heat cycles place more stress on materials. Lubrication becomes more critical as clearances tighten. The engine is no longer working within the same comfortable margin it once had. This does not mean failure is immediate or inevitable. It means the balance has changed. Instead of long-term stability being the primary goal, performance and compliance share that role. The engine becomes a system where multiple priorities must be managed at once. Performance gains are real, but they come with a different kind of cost. If you want more real breakdowns like this, no hype, just what actually matters over time, make sure you're subscribed, because the next one goes even deeper into what's changing and what it means for the bikes you're riding today, what it takes to keep them running now. As designs become more compact and systems are added to meet modern requirements, access to key components becomes more restricted. Parts that were once easy to reach now sit behind layers of other components. Simple tasks require more preparation, more time, and more precision. Work that used to be straightforward turns into a process. Panels come off, components are moved aside, tools must fit into tighter spaces. The mechanical knowledge required remains the same, but the path to applying it becomes more complex. This affects both professional technicians and riders who prefer to handle their own maintenance. Jobs that once felt manageable in a home garage begin to require specialized tools or additional time. What used to be a quick adjustment turns into a planned task. The machine has not become unreliable. It has become more involved. Maintaining it demands a different level of commitment. Attention to detail increases. Small mistakes carry greater consequences because of tighter tolerances and more integrated systems. Routine care remains essential, but it feels different. Instead of simply keeping up with wear, maintenance becomes a way to stay ahead of a system that operates with less margin. The relationship between rider and machine shifts from familiarity to careful management. If this one hit home, like the video, subscribe for more real rider breakdowns and drop your thoughts in the comments. What engine earned your trust the hard way? And do you think true long-term reliability still matters to the industry anymore?